Hey there, everybody. Pete here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Dream Setlist. So today, of course, because I have Sydney Taylor in the house, we're doing a little Alice Cooper. So you know the drill, guys. This is the show where we put together that set list from a favorite band that we would love to see, whether it's past, present, or future, any lineup, any configuration of songs, any tour, could be a made up tour, could be anything, right? So we are the boss, we are in the driver's seat. So, of course, Sydney is going to kick us off with her dream set list today and take us through the entire concert, Sydney.
So this was exciting for me because, I've seen Alice many times. Probably over, 20 times at this point. And, he's done a lot of different, I've seen him do a lot of different sets. But there's some songs there, I'm a diehard fan. So there are just some songs, man, that he's never played that mean so much to me that I would love to see him play. And it was nice to be able to put together what I would love to see him play. And as always, I feel like this list could forever be changing. It's so, it's so hard to be like, this is the one and only. But I'm going to go with actually the current lineup that Alice has now. Probably my favorite lineup that he's had in recent years. At this point, this lineup has been the same for about 5-6 years. So, obviously Nita Strauss, Tommy Henriksen, Ryan Roxie, Chuck Garrett, Glenn Sobel, Alice, of course. But the reason I picked the current lineup is that I really wanted to be able to pick from Alice's entire catalog, because there are songs from the very, from Love It to Death to, some of his most recent records that I would love to see in the set. So it was really hard for me. I thought about going and doing, an original group, set list or lineup, but I decided I wanted to do the current lineup. So the first song on my set, or in my set, is going to be Hello Hooray off of this album right here. To me, like the perfect Alice Cooper kickoff song. The first line, it's Hello Hooray, let the show begin. Yep. I've been ready. It's perfect. It's just big sound, big like production on that song. So that would definitely be my number one. I did this song first, I think back in 2015 on the Alice Cooper Motley Crue tour he did, and he opened up with it, and it was perfect. So that's gonna be number one. Number two, it's gonna go right into, I'm gonna stick with this album, it's gonna go right into No More Mr. Nice Guy. He usually does that in the beginning of the set. And to me, there's no better moment at an Alice Cooper concert than hearing the introduction to that riff. It's just so good. And it's No More Mr. Nice Guy is like my second favorite Alice song of all time. I know it's a big hit, but it's one of those songs that takes me back to being, starting out as a fan and really loving Alice. So that's like one of my favorite songs of all time. So that's going to be number two in the set, kind of starting out a little bit on the earlier side of Alice's career in the set list. Next up, I'm going to do Caught in a Dream off of Love It to Death. My favorite song off of this record. Starts out the album very, very strong, and I think would be so good live. I've never seen him do this song live. He hasn't done it. I can't even remember the last time he's done this, if he's ever done it live, to be honest. Maybe back in the early 70s. Yeah, I've never seen him do it. And I know that there's a lot of my friends that are diehard fans that have wanted him to do that song forever. He did Long Way to Go off this album a couple years ago, but I would love to see him do Caught in a Dream. So that's number three. Number four, I'm going to do Looney Tune off of School's Out. Another great song, kind of dark and mysterious kind of song. It was written by Alice and Dennis Dunaway. And I do have the shout out to Steven Keeler for selling me the first pressing for way too cheap. He scammed himself. I got this for way too cheap. He could have charged me way more, but thanks for Steven Keeler at Rock Fantasy for this awesome first pressing of School's Out. But yeah, Looney Tune, I think is just such an underrated song. Again, one of those songs, I don't think he's ever played it live other than back then. And I would love to see him break this one out. Number five, I'm going to do Be My Lover off of Killer. Kind of a must-have in my Alice set list. A great song written by Michael Bruce, obviously off of the Killer record, 1971. And I mean, it's an Alice staple. Had to have it in there somewhere. Number 6 we're on. I'm gonna do Department of Youth from Welcome to My Nightmare.
Good choice.
Another one of my favorite songs off of this album, and another song that I've never seen him do live. He's done it a couple times in recent years. He was actually doing it on this last tour that he was in Europe before the pandemic. He was adding it to the end of the set. And he only added it when he went to Europe because I saw him on the US tour and he didn't have it in. And then when he went to Europe, he put it in and I was like, oh, I can't believe you did that. But I love Department of Youth. It's just, really kind of upbeat, kind of, rockin' song off of this album. So that is going to be number 6. Number 7, I'm going to be kind of transitioning into the 80s a little bit. I'm going to go with Bed of Nails off of Trash.
Great song.
My favorite song off this album, and he actually added this to the set, which I have to give Alice props. He's really been adding some songs that are deep cuts and stuff in the past couple years that he wasn't doing for a while, and this was one of them. He did this back in 2019, and I was so shocked. I was like, just incredibly shocked.
He played it at Bethel Woods, and that was pretty cool to hear. Were you at that show?
Yeah, I was at that show. He played it, and I saw that tour a couple times, and I was just blown away because I was like, I can't believe, you're playing that song, because he also doesn't like to play a ton of songs from this record. Like, I love Spark in the Dark, but he doesn't play that one because it's a little too sexual for him, and he said that. So, I mean, I don't blame him. But yeah, I mean, I love that song. So that would be number 7. Number 8, I'm going to go with He's Back off of Constrictor,
Nice.
Man Behind the Mask. This is in my top 5 favorite Alice Cooper songs of all time. Again, very lucky. He added this into the set in 2019. I did get to see him do this one time after years and years of waiting. I even saw him on Friday the 13th one time and he didn't do it. I was like, are you kidding me? I really thought he was going to add it in and he didn't, but my dream was achieved when he added this into the set, his last tour before the pandemic. So it's one of those songs where it's so cheesy that it's good. It's, it's obviously all themed about the, Friday the 13th and Jason, and it's a little bit corny, but it's so corny and cheesy that it's
a lot of 80s horror stuff is corny, but you know what? That's what we love about it, right?
Right. It's just so good. And to be honest, I love the synth in it. Even Kane Roberts' solo that he did, was kind of just perfect for this song. It wasn't too crazy, but perfect for the song. And Nita Strauss can really pull off Kane Roberts' playing. She did The World Needs Guts off of this record not too long ago, and she really has that kind of shredder vibe. So I feel like she would really do, and she does do this song justice. So that is going to be number 8. Number 9, I don't have my physical copy with me at the moment. I forgot to grab it, but I would do wow, can I speak today? Paranoid Personality, it's a tongue twister, off of Paranormal, which came out in 2017. And to be honest, I wasn't going to put this in the set originally, but the way I kind of developed the second half of this set is, Alice tends to do a lot of concept-based, shows. He does a lot of songs based around a story. And so I was kind of, when I was putting this together, I was kind of putting together my own story in my head of how the songs might go. And I mean, usually in a show, he has like, he's, crazy, and then he kills somebody, and then he's remorseful, and then he's not remorseful, and they kill him, and he comes back to life. And that's kind of the beginning and the end. But that's kind of how I was phrasing this. And so I think Paranoid Personality is one that, came out in 2017, and is one of those songs that I feel like is so catchy and is so strong from him to have come out in recent years, to be honest. It's just, again, kind of like we mentioned in the album review earlier, is that it's the fact that he's still putting out like such catchy songs and stuff that in his early 70s, 50 years later, is just crazy. So I wanted to add that one in there. Next, my number 10 is going to be Love's a Loaded Gun from Hey Stupid.
Ooh, nice choice.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites from that record.
That's a really fun album.
Oh, it's one of those things where people I know give it shit, give that album crap. And I mean, a lot of these people who are really like, Alice was only good when he was with the original band. And I'm like, okay, have some fun. It's a good album. I know it's a little bit more on the hair metal side, as people like to say, and it's a little more commercial, but there's some really great songs.
Absolutely.
It's more than just Feed My Frankenstein, folks, if you haven't listened to the whole record. But that's one I love. I've never seen him do it live. And the video is really weird, but super cool. So I love Love's a Loaded Gun. Number 11, I'm going to be sticking with the same album and going for Might As Well Be on Mars, cool. Which is like a 7-minute track. I don't think Alice has ever played that song live. Yeah, but he often quotes it as probably the best song that he's ever written. That's usually what he says. And super underrated ballad, power ballad, whatever you want to call it. It's really cool, kind of honestly unlike I think anything Alice has ever done. Like that song was just so stand out. I wish he would do it live at least once. I'm like begging him, like, please do it at least once. I know it's like 7 minutes long, so it's a little hard to squeeze into a set, but I love that song.
Yeah, you're creating a set, so
yeah, it's I kind of, when I was doing this, I was basing it off of the number of songs that he normally does in a set, so I could kind of stay on track. But hopefully one day he'll put that song in. Number 12, I'm gonna do a little bit of a medley. I'm gonna do I Never Cry off of this album right here, Alice Cooper Goes to Hell. And then also kind of a little bit of a medley into Killed by Love, which is off of Along Came a Spider, which is one of my favorite Alice Cooper songs. Never played it live. Just short track, super great. And I think that if you put those two songs together, they would kind of flow together so nicely. And again, I'm kind of going for the whole kind of story. So this is a part in the story where he's like, questioning, why he's doing these things. So I Never Cry and Killed by Love. So that was 12 and 13. 14, I'm going to go for Guilty off of this record as well. Such a good song. He did this in recent years as well. And again, this is a whole concept album about Alice Cooper going to hell. So Guilty, he usually does. He's, again, in my set, he's guilty. He killed the woman. He was remorseful. Now he's guilty. He doesn't really care. Number 15 is going to be going to my favorite album of all time. I have it behind me here, From the Inside. And I've only seen Alice do one song from this album. He did Serious a couple years ago. So I had to put a bunch of songs from this in my set list because I would kill just to see this entire album played from top to bottom. But my number 15 is going to be the title track, From the Inside. Great way to start off this record, period. But I think a good song, good rockin' song to add into the set. In 16, followed by From the Inside, I'm going to do Nurse Rosetta off of this album as well. Again, in my top 5 favorite Alice Cooper songs of all time. Just super kind of creepy lyrics and kind of like weird stuff going on. But obviously the nurse plays a big role in his shows as well. So, his wife Cheryl comes out and plays the nurse. So she's done it before. She did it in 1978. So she could come out again and play Nurse Rosetta.
Of course.
I just love that song. Number 17, I'm going to go for Ballad of Dwight Fry off of this record. Again, I've seen him do the song a million times, but to me, I could see him do it a million more. He's,
you can't have an Alice Cooper show without that song. Right?
You can't have it. It's iconic. The straight jacket. It's just iconic. I wish he would do the full version though. That's going to be my request, that he does the full version. He doesn't do the full version anymore. He kind of just does the first 2 verses and then they move on. But if he would do the full version, that would be super cool. Then we're going to go into the song Killer off of Killer, which again, I would love for him to do the full version. He just kind of does a little piano part kind of thing at the end, kind of like bass part before he gets his head cut off. But I would love for them to do the full song because there's more to that track than just that part that they play live. I feel like a lot of people aren't 100% familiar with it. So Killer. Then I'm going to go for I Love the Dead off of this. $1 Billion Babies. Of course, he's going to get his head chopped off. Guillotine, all that fun stuff. And again, that's just such a fun sing-along song. Wish you would do the full version. This is another one. They only do part of it. And the whole song is great. Creepy lyrics. I love the dead before they're cold. Just like typical Alice Cooper stuff. The whole song was just filled with lyrics like that. They're bluing flesh for me to hold. It's classic. I wish he would do the full version. So full version's gonna be in my set again. Number 20 is gonna be Escape off of Welcome to My Nightmare. Again, it's my top 5 favorite Alice Cooper songs. He did this on the last tour, which I couldn't believe. I literally could not believe that he pulled that song out. He used to do this super cool thing in the 70s where he would come through, they had like a video playing and he would come through a screen. He'd break through the screen, and they timed it seamlessly so it looked like he was coming out of the movie onto the stage during that song. And ever since I saw that, I have the Welcome to My Nightmare video, and ever since I saw that, I loved that song, and I was so happy that I got to see him do it live at least once, or twice or whatever. But it's so good. It's just such a fun track. So that's gonna be number 20. Number 21 is gonna be How You Gonna See Me Now. My favorite Alice Cooper song of all time. Super underrated. I always say Alice Cooper is a master ballad writer. He has some of the best ballads that I've ever heard in my life. And this is one of them. And it was actually, the lyrics to this song was based on a real letter that he sent to his wife, Cheryl, when he was in the mental asylum. Of course, no rehab at the time, so he had to go to mental asylum up in upstate New York, actually. So I love that song. You can really tell that song was just really kind of from the heart, and kind of what, he was going through at that time period. And he played that song one time on one tour, the tour for this album in 1979. He hasn't played it since. It breaks my heart. I've talked to people that he, in his camp, and they're all like, we would love for him to do that song. And I'm like, not as much as me. Please have him do it. Please. I'm begging you. It's just, oh man, it's just so good. I know it's a ballad, but just one of those songs where I don't know if my life will ever feel complete if I don't hear that song live. So.
Maybe someday, right? Maybe someday.
I know, I'm crossing my fingers, man. Every time I'm seeing him, I'm like, are you going to do How You Gonna See Me Now? Because I think that you need to. Number 22, I'm going to have, of course, I'm 18. Have to include that in the set. It's just, again, one of those songs that really brings me back to loving Alice Cooper. It just really does. It's like, every time I hear that riff, one of those songs I can just hear over and over again and never get sick of. And I don't know, it's when I listen to it, it kind of just brings me back to like the original group and just kind of like learning all about the band and kind of just really that time period for me that was like essential, in becoming a diehard fan. So number 22, and then lastly, number 23, last song in my set, I'm gonna go for School's Out, title track. You got to finish with that song. The bell goes off and the balloons, and at this point, I could probably see him not do the. Nowadays, he'll add another brick in the wall into the song.
Yeah.
He's done that for a lot of years now. I mean, I'm at this point, I've seen him enough times where I could probably, have him say, okay, you can stop doing that now, and have him just do the full song. But yeah, you can't have an Alice Cooper set without School's Out. So those are mine. I have a million more songs that I wish I could have put in here, like No More Love at Your Convenience off of Lace and Whiskey, which I wish I could have put in there. But some of those songs, I've heard Alice say, some of the songs he's tried to add into the set, they don't just translate as well live. So there's so much more. It's really hard for me, but that's my set.
That's a pretty cool set. I'd go to that show. Easily.
So would I.
Easily. So I'm glad you took that approach because I took a totally different approach. So, we joke a lot on the Hudson Valley Squares, and Sydney does it all the time about how, she was too young to experience a lot of the stuff that we experienced growing up. I mean, I saw tons of shows as a teenager in the early, mid 80s and throughout that decade. But unfortunately, I was a little too young to see a lot of the stuff that I really would kill to have seen.
Yeah.
So I have long wanted to be able to hop in my time machine and go back to see the original Alice Cooper group in their heyday. So my set list, I'm going to hop in that and use that time machine. And I'm going to go back to 1973, the $1 Billion Babies tour for a headline show at Madison Square Garden. Okay.
Oh, wow.
And at this particular show, they're going to play all the great songs from those first couple of albums, in addition to the entire $1 Billion Babies album. So let me take you through my set. So again, this is Alice, this is Glenn, Michael, Neil, and Dennis, the classic lineup. All right, everybody's functioning perfectly. They're still kind of getting along. So they're going to start off the concert with a little Under My Wheels from the Killer album. All right, because got to go up tempo and get people into it right away. From there, we're going to go to Is It My Body from Love It to Death. From that moment, then they're going to launch into the first side of $1 Billion Babies. So we're going to get Hello Hooray to let the show begin. Let the $1 Billion Babies part of the show begin. Raped and Freezing.
Oh, so good.
Elected. The title track, $1 Billion Babies, and Unfinished Suite. Originally, I was thinking like, well, maybe I'll just do like some select tracks from that album. But then the more I was like, man, this, you can't take any of these songs out of this. If you're going to play like the majority of the album, you got to play the whole album, right? And it's not a really long album. So it's about what, 40 minutes. So they could totally do this in a 2-hour set, do the whole album. So from there, we're going to take a little break from $1 Billion Babies. We're going to launch into Desperado from Killer. We're then going to go to the Love It to Death album for a little Hallowed Be Thy Name. Or Be My Name. Let's not confuse this with Iron Maiden here. And then we're going to go back to Killer for Be My Lover. Okay, so a nice little 3-song interlude before we go back into $1 Billion Babies. We're going to go No More Mr. Nice Guy. And again, let's try and go back in time. Most of these songs are going to be pretty new to everybody. So I figure breaking it up midway is probably the right thing to do. Then we're going to go to Generation Landslide. What a great song. Now the creepy part of this set, right, of the $1 Billion Babies set, we've got Sick Things, Mary Ann, and then of course I Love the Dead with all the theatrics and all that kind of stuff, which here people are seeing basically for the first time. All right, so then of course the band's going to go take a little bit of a break. They're going to come back out. Whoop, there's Alice again. We're going to launch into Halo of Flies from Killer. We're going to go to Dead Babies, and then the entire Ballad of Dwight Fry from Love It to Death. Okay, so that is going to end the set. Lights go down, people at the Garden going crazy with the lighters and chanting Alice, Alice, Alice. And then, of course, the band, this is the predictable part of the set. They're going to come out and do 18, and then you got to end it with School's Out, right?
Yeah.
So there you have, like, for me, and I love your approach too, because I think if I was going to pick like the current band who are so good, I would love like for them to draw from every era. But I think if I had to kind of go with my gut, I would just love to go back in time and see that original band, because that was probably something pretty special. And, you know, here they're dipping into a lot of their most well-known songs of the time. But I think to hear $1 Billion Babies in its entirety, I know that's kind of cliche these days for bands to come out and play full albums, but how cool would it have been back then when bands were not doing that at all?
Right.
Bands would never do that back in the day, play like a full new album, right? But I think that would be totally awesome, because this whole album deserves to be played start to finish. So there you have it. That's a pretty cool Garden show. I would have been 7 years old. So obviously, unless mom or dad were going to take me, and I will say there was no chance of that happening, because mom and dad, Alice Cooper, oh, that evil satanic guy. No. It's like, what? So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love that you added, well, of course, it's part of the album, but like Mary Ann is like one of those songs that's like, it's so short, but like so creepy, but so good. It's just like a kind of ballad and piano song. And it's funny because Generation Landslide is one of those songs I just mentioned where Alice says people ask him to do that song all the time. He's added it to a set a couple of times, and he goes, whenever I play it, he's like, it's like crickets. It's like people are, and I'm like, but it's so like Generation Landslide, man. How are you crickets for that, right? It's so freaking good.
Well, you know, unfortunately, it's like we live in a day and age where the majority of the people, I'll probably, 75%, I'll throw that out there, of the people who go to see Alice Cooper live only want to hear the hits and the popular songs. And for you and me, who are big fans, I mean, Generation Landslide is a genius song, but it wasn't played on the radio back then. So, of course, unless you were like an album person, that song is basically like unknown. So, but, you know, if we were to go back in time in the 70s, I bet you Generation Landslide goes over great. But nowadays, I get it. So I can imagine Alice is probably pretty frustrated with trying to test a lot of the more obscure songs, especially from the 70s albums, throwing them into the set and seeing people, you know, basically getting no reaction to them. I mean, that's got to be frustrating. But the diehards who know this stuff like really well, to us, that's like, wow, pulling out the gems, you know, pulling out the little diamonds in the rough, but they just don't stick in the set list because people just want to hear, you know, I Love the Dead and, you know, Dead Babies and School's Out, I'm 18, and, you know, all the other ones that he has to play every single set. But I don't know. I think this would be a fantastic set to experience. And yeah, if only that time machine thing existed, right?
Well, it's funny. The funny thing about my set list too, like you mentioned, of course, I've gone through my whole life, you know, not being able to see a lot of the shows I wish I could have. The really screwed up thing was I became an Alice Cooper fan. My dad he went to go see Alice in 2009, and he went with my godfather is a huge rock fan. He went, it was the Theater of Death tour in 2009. And this was like a tour. It's just so bittersweet. It's a tour that I wish I could have seen. I was like 9 or 10 years old, and you know, at that point I knew Alice Cooper. But my dad wanted to go out with a friend. He didn't want to, you know, I mean, he took me to shows, but I also wasn't like super like, yes, Alice Cooper, you know, it was just kind of like, okay, dad's going to a concert, whatever. And he catches these beads while he sees Alice, and he gives them to me when I get home. And for some reason, I don't even know what it was. It was like the fact that somebody on a stage had this or whatever. I was fascinated, and I became obsessed with Alice Cooper. But the screwed up thing is that show that he went to, is he played so many of the songs that are on my set list. And it's the only time that he's played in recent years that he's played From the Inside, Nurse Rosetta, all of those songs. He hasn't played them since. He did Sirius, like I said, a couple of years ago, which is, I mean, it's my favorite album of all time. So love that song, and I love getting to see it. But there are also so many other songs off of that album that I wish I could have seen. And I was like, I can't believe that I was old enough to go and I still missed that show. Like, and he hasn't played them at all since. So I'm like, man, it's insane. I was like, dude, it breaks my heart because I have the DVD and I look at the set and I'm like, I could have been there. But yeah, I mean, hopefully one day he brings those songs back into the set. If you know, but like you just said, it's kind of hard, you know. I mean, he adds a lot of these songs in, and you know, it's difficult, you know. It's, I mean, like you said, there's songs that we all know and love, and you know, we want to see. I mean, but I've reached a point where like if I didn't see Billion Dollar Babies live again, like just the song, I probably would be okay, you know. Like there are some songs that I wish could be squeezed in there, but what are you gonna do?
Here's an interesting thing, which may or may not blow your mind. So you probably know like a lot of the stuff that I really like. So Would you believe that I didn't start listening to Alice Cooper till probably the late 90s, early 2000s?
No, that's really surprising.
And I grew up as a Kiss fan, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, Deep Purple, Rainbow, Scorpions, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, blah, 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 blah. For whatever reason, and you know what I think it is too? I think because, you know, when I really started getting into music, like 78, 79, you know, heavier bands, the early 80s and into the 80s. I mean, Alice was going through that weird kind of blackout period, which that stuff's not really heavy. And those albums really weren't big sellers. They weren't playing any of that stuff on the radio because radio was huge at the time. And while I knew like all the classic songs from the 70s, I never bought an Alice Cooper album until like, I don't know, 98 or 99, something like that.
Wow.
Although you know, I knew the 80s stuff when the 80s stuff came out, the late 80s stuff. I mean, you know, he had the stuff on MTV and I was like, okay, that's pretty good. And, you know, whatever, but I never bought any of those. I always kind of dug it, but I never bought any of it because even when Alice was getting big again in the late 80s, the early 90s, I was like really into thrash. And while I thought the Alice stuff was kind of cool, I was into Slayer and Megadeth and Metallica and Exodus and all that kind of stuff and Testament. So it wasn't until I think when he came out with, trying to think of the album, like Along Came the Spider. I bought that when it came out and I started picking up those like late 90s, early 2000s albums. And I was like, oh, you know what? This is right up my alley. What the hell? And then I went out and bought like Killer and Billion Dollar Babies. I'm like, how the hell did I not buy these back in the day? I mean, this is like completely in line with everything that I've always listened to. So it's one of those stories of better late than never. And now, you know, here we are 20 some odd years later, and I, love Alice Cooper and have everything he ever did. So it's just interesting how he's one of those rare, like hard rockers, heavy rockers from the time period of where everything that I listen to comes from that I just never experimented with back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, you're right though. I mean, the early 80s, he was in that really strange time period. And I mean, I don't know, a lot of people love those records.
They do. Yeah.
They really do. And I remember I mentioned this and somebody had left a comment and like said something like, I didn't think I liked it because I was mostly into like, kind of like the hair metal, the glam metal. And I mean, although that's true to a certain extent, as I do love that kind of music, I just feel like those albums, I listen to them. There's some songs that I'm like, okay, I like Flush the Fashion. That's, because to me, that's right before, I don't even really consider that a Blackout album.
It's a little bit of both worlds.
It's, there are some songs on there that I really love and some songs that you can kind of see are leaning towards what came in the next 3 records. But there's some songs I like off of Dada, like Formerly Warmer is really creepy and weird. I mean, there are like some songs that I do like, but all in all, I mean, Alice will even admit this, it wasn't a cohesive time period. Like there really wasn't any, they were kind of all over the place in my opinion. And so I totally like respect anybody who, if that's your favorite, if Zipper Catches Skin.
There are a lot of people who absolutely love those albums. It's their favorite period. And
I own all of them. They're back here.
Yeah, somewhere. I have them too. Yeah.
I have them, but I just, like my copy of Zipper Catches Skin is sealed. I don't, it really is. I got it, God, a couple years ago at this point, and this baby is sealed. And I mean, aside from the fact that I want to keep it sealed because it's a sealed album from 1982 or whatever, it's just also I just don't reach for them very much. It's just, I don't know, it's just how it is. But
yeah, I mean, they all have some good songs on them, I will admit that. I find the albums a little cold sounding, and
they're lacking like, I don't know, the feeling, that original kind of like Alice Cooper feeling that even, I mean, not just even in the original band, but kind of that carried into his solo stuff. I guess that also could just be, obviously it is a translation of where he was at that point,
Yeah. But there are plenty of people like it for those reasons, and I totally respect that. So
yeah, absolutely.
I don't reach for those albums much at all, and they're kind of cool for what they are, but I don't get a ton of enjoyment out of listening to them. And it's like, and for me, I like to listen to music that I enjoy listening to. And I listen to those and I'm kind of like, all right, yeah, it's a couple good tracks here and there, but I don't know. Not quite my favorite, because I remember I did like an Alice Cooper ranking the album show, like, I don't know, a year and a half ago or something like that. And like all of those albums were all the way down at the bottom of my list. And there were people like throwing a tantrum that I didn't like them as much as they do. And I'm like, well, sorry, if you love them, great. I don't. I like them for what they are, but not even near my favorite Alice Cooper albums, not even close. But
no, when I was getting into him originally, I remember I would watch interviews with him, and it was kind of in that period where I was starting to listen to all the music and like get into all the albums and really listen to all of them. And I remember one time in an interview he mentioned that like the Blackout period or some of like, he's like, you talk to any diehard fan and it's their favorite album, and I was like, oh shit, like maybe I should like really like listen to these. And I listened to them and I was like, this was not what I was expecting. Like, and again, it's like, if you enjoy it, by all means, like, but it's just one of those things. Like I said, I like certain songs. There's some good tracks on them, and it's a little bit of, stuff that, you wouldn't expect from Alice Cooper, which is kind of cool. It's kind of, I don't even know how to describe it, like a little bit of like new wavy, like.
Well, that's a good point. Here's the thing. It's like, as much of a mess as he was during that time period and probably doesn't remember much of it, the music on those albums is very much of that time period. Right. I mean, they're literally, he didn't, with the band, he didn't go into the studio and make rehashes of the 70s stuff. Yeah. Those early albums are very much what was going on in music at the time. Yeah, I mean, but the look notwithstanding, right?
It's a little rough. But I mean, it's also, people talk about this, and like, I'm glad it was only a three album string or whatever, mostly because of the fact that I'm glad that he's still alive. Oh. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things where, I mean, I am glad it was only 3 records, man, because he was also just not in a good place. So it's, kind of looking back, I'm like, Okay. Yeah, it makes sense, and I'm glad that
Dark period, exploring like new wave and electronic
yeah.
music and post punk and what have you. It's yeah, it's definitely different, and it's interesting too to think of and I'm pretty sure they were friends, but the parallels between like what happened with him and with Pete Townsend right around the same time. They both like were kind of basically alcoholics throughout the 70s and ran into that dry spell creatively speaking, and then kind of stopped the drinking and then went right into the heavy drugs, right? The hard drugs, and floundered for a couple of years in the 80s. I mean, Townsend had the same issue. I mean, he went from being a total like brandy boozer throughout the 70s to all of a sudden like doing heroin. It's
Yeah.
like, and went through the same exact time period when Pete started doing, Keith Moon died and Pete started doing all those solo albums. That was his dark period too. Although, Pete's albums were pretty creative still at the time, but it's just interesting how some of those guys like survived the 70s by the skin of their teeth. And then the 80s kicked in and it got even darker pretty quick. Glenn Hughes is another one, but Glenn kept going on, throughout the decade. Whereas, Alice and Pete got sober. So yeah, weird.
And a lot of people didn't know too, but at that point they were, it was kind of really said for sure when he did that documentary a couple years ago. And I mean, people thought that he was kind of just drinking, and then he was drinking really heavily. And I mean, like it was you kind of see the parallels. If he drank, he went through that period where he was like on TV and like in the late 70s and was like, he was like beautiful. He was like looked healthy and like glowing, and then all of a sudden it was like, whoa, it was just like right off the deep end. It was just
doing crack and all this, like, what the hell?
Insane. And you watch that documentary, I mean, obviously it was, and it's interesting, it was right around that time at the very end of, because you can see it in the DVD of The Shirt You're Wearing, where Strange Case of Alice Cooper, you can kind of see like he's really skinny. It was right after he recorded From the Inside, right after that time period. It was just like boom. And I don't know.
Real thin, like really
thin. You look at him, and he did this interview with Tom Snyder that I'm sure you've seen, where he has like the bun and like it was a little wild. It was a little wild, but
hey, but he's alive and well and doing quite well these days, and 70 something years old, and
40 years sober. I think almost 40 years sober at this point. Yeah, so it's pretty incredible. Cool.
Yeah, and he's become like a true celebrity. I mean, he's still that kind of rock god, sort of the shock rocker and what have you. But man, he could be a pro golf player, right? He does the talk shows, the radio stuff. And I know many people who have actually met him and sat down with him, and they say he's just the nicest guy in the world.
He's the best. And I have to share this just really quickly. So this is really funny. I was driving home yesterday. I was running errands, and I was with my dad. We were running errands, and I look on the side of the road. We're stopped at a light, and I look over the side of the road, and I see this sign right here. Wait, in Philly. I was so shocked. My dad pulls over. He's like, "Get out the car. Take it. Get out the car. Take it."
You were destined to see that, right?
I've never seen, and like, I'm not trying to fool myself and think that Alice is as big as he once was. He's my favorite. He's the biggest artist in my heart, but. I haven't seen that for like some of the major pop artists, nowadays.
I haven't seen that since the 80s, early 90s.
I was blown away. We pulled over and I was like, I'm taking this. And
is there a record store anywhere near there or anything?
There was like a Best Buy like down the road. So we were thinking like maybe
they don't sell music anymore. Wow.
But yeah, I'm like, it was the weirdest thing. There was like 2 or 3 of them, and it was the most bizarre thing. But I took it because I had to.
Absolutely, you should have taken it.
I was like, it's gonna get like rained on or thrown away or some shit, and I'm gonna be mad that I didn't take it.
Wow, I didn't think record labels were making stuff like that anymore.
No, he's been doing a lot of promotion though for this new album. He's been doing stuff in like Europe, and he just posted this thing about like he had like an artist do like this art like piece like out of chalk on like it's some crazy stuff. They've been really kind of doing a good job with promoting this, and wow. I think that it's like it was #1 like top like album sales on Billboard or something. So it's been working. So go ahead and check out the album review that we did at Detroit Stories and buy Detroit Stories.
That's right. It's quite good.
because it's a great record.
That's a great find. Yeah, it's almost like someone put that out there specifically for you to see and grab, right? Because you're definitely not going to see that sitting on the side of the road in my town. I'll tell you that right now.
I couldn't believe it, man. I was like, what are the odds? Like, that is some crazy.
Hold that up again. That's very cool.
Yeah, it was stolen off the street, ladies and gentlemen.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, man. I was kind of like, wow, that's bizarre. I have to figure out what to do with.
Is it too thick to put in a frame someday, or?
I honestly probably could. It's not any bigger than like a poster, it's I could probably take the metal things out and put it in a frame, but yeah. I'm like, man, that's some cool shit.
That totally is. Wow. When you went, I got something to show. I'm like, what does she got? I'm like, whoa, I haven't seen one of those in a million years. I mean, this is 2021, right? I mean, we didn't like hop in that time capsule thing I was talking about, right?
Hopefully soon, but
oh my God. So there you have it, everybody. Some cool dream set list from Sydney and myself, both from totally different eras. A lot of cool songs. So everybody knows the drill. In the comments section below, type out your dream set list for Alice Cooper. Again, any era, any lineup, any batch of songs, past, present, future. You want to come up with a dream scenario for 2022, do that. You want to go back in time, do that. Hey, you're in control. So do what you will, and visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. Sydney, you want to plug any up and coming podcast on Metal from the Inside?
Yeah, well, first, for all of my Alice Cooper lovers, which you must be if you're watching this, I did have the chance to speak with Dennis Dunaway a couple weeks back, and you can go ahead and watch that conversation on Metal from the Inside YouTube channel, which is also my podcast. If you just type in Metal from the Inside, it should pop right up. So I had the chance to speak with Dennis, which is super cool. We talked about the new Alice record, as he did have some credits and writing and recording on this record. So that was super fun. So if you're an Alice Cooper fan, be sure to check that out. I'm speaking with Phil Suzanne today, later on in just a little bit. That's going to be this week's episode, and a lot more is in the works. So as always, be sure to listen wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe on YouTube as well.
And I'm going to selfishly plug an appearance I made on Sydney's podcast about 2 weeks ago, where we talked at length about some of our favorite Whitesnake songs. So if you haven't caught that yet, go check that out. That was a lot of fun as well. So what do we got coming up on the channel? What is today? Wednesday. So I am going to be appearing live on Guitar Hack tonight. So myself and Martin Popoff are going to be talking with Guitar Hack about our favorite 5 Aerosmith albums. So that's coming up later tonight. Tomorrow morning, stay tuned for another dream set list with Mr. Guitar Hack himself and Jack Toledano, where we lay out our dream set list for Kiss. So that is coming up tomorrow morning. So you don't want to miss that. And a lot more stuff happening. We got Hudson Valley Squares coming up Monday night with Sydney, myself, and the rest of the Squares. So stay tuned for that next week, and all sorts of other stuff here on the channel. So if you haven't subscribed, make sure you do that. Click a like button, give us some love. You got the Ko-Fi link below, link to our merch page. Don't forget to check out Sydney's merch page as well. All sorts of cool t-shirts she's got available online as well. So for Sydney Taylor, I'm Pete Pardo. See you all later on. Take care.